Okay, looks like we're recording. This is Vietnam, part 2B, because I got interrupted. No bell. So I looked at the clock and I realized I had a class starting at the exact minute I was recording. Um, so it was a good place to stop because I need to reiterate on that this Ho Chi Minh Trail on the Viet Cong and how the Ho Chi Minh Trail supplied the Viet Cong. So this is, even though I think it's technically a battle map, it does a great job. And if you did the map, if we're in, next year when we're in school, kids will do the map. So I would have you color all of Vietnam one color. In this case, it's yellow. It could be any light color. We have the 17th parallel here to delineate that during the war, from the time that the elections were canceled, or the time the Geneva Accords divided the country, until technically 1975. So from 54 to 65, the country was divided. It is not divided today, as you know. That's why there's one color. Of the duration of the war, this was North Vietnam with the capital of Hanoi. This was South Vietnam with the capital of Saigon. So the many people living in the South were sympathetic to the North, just like many people in our own Civil War, especially in the border states, were sympathetic to the North. So it happens, and many states were divided. One brother went to the North, one son went to the South, etc. So it shouldn't surprise anyone in a civil war that there are going to be people in the South who sympathize with the Northern communists, and they're called the Viet Cong, and they actually fight on behalf of the communists, even though they live and reside in the South. They are not part of the army of the South Vietnamese. They are not sympathetic to Americans. And that is the Viet Cong. They're the enemy within. But the problem is we can't find the enemy because the communists, the Viet Cong, don't wear Northern Viet Minh uniforms. They are just the people who want the Americans to go home. They want to reunite their country. They want the foreign influence. Diem is long gone after 63, but regardless, another puppet gets put in as leader. That's a puppet to the Americans or the West, in general, and they just want it gone. They want their country united. So anyway, the North, or the communists, supply the Viet Cong fighters in the South through this Ho Chi Minh Trail. So again, I'm just reminding you that it starts in the North. It goes through the neighboring countries of Laos and Cambodia, and the majority of the time, the American strategy is, this is how we fight. We bomb the North, just bomb. And the communists, the Vietnamese, are very patient people. They just rebuild. They just, whatever we bomb, they rebuild. So they don't capitulate. They don't surrender. This is, a huge Herculean feat of these people, but they don't give up. They want their independence. They've been occupied for so much of their history. They just will do anything for independence. So that's the style of the Vietnamese that we can't comprehend. Our history isn't that long. We do not have that much of a survivor mentality. So this is confusing to the Americans. So another thing we're doing is another strategy is we are trying to win the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese, because we do not have the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese in the countryside, as I alluded to in the other video. They're not benefiting from Western influence. They're not, a store owner in Saigon. They're not, they don't own a pizza parlor in a city that's benefiting hugely from capitalism. They're country folk. They have water buffalo. They have crops. They don't have extravagant political views. And again, the Americans are seen as outsiders. So we try to win the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese villagers. And this is how we do it. If there's a suspected Viet Cong village, because again, the enemy is in the South, we don't know. So we go into a village, and if there's any sign or suspicion of Viet Cong infiltrating that village, we will destroy the village. So what we do is we take the suspected people in the village, we take them, put them in a relocation center, basically put them behind barbed wire. This is the Allies now. We put them remove them from their home, their village, their property, and we poison their well, we burn their crops, and we kill the water buffalo. Maybe once in a while, water buffalo can go with them. But for the most part, we destroy the village in order to save it. That's our strategy. Winning the hearts and minds. You need to destroy a village in order to save it. It's very confusing, isn't it? So Vietnamese people, villagers, are completely anti-American. Whether or not they find the Viet Cong, the well is poisoned. The crops are gone. These people now stay in a relocation or detention center for the duration. How's that? I don't know how that's winning any hearts and minds. So this is where the confusion comes in. I don't know basically what the Americans are thinking. And of course, they're trying to find this Ho Chi Minh Trail so they can stop the supply line and win the war. And the problem is, again, confusing because they can't find it. Now, how can the American army, we've won. Look at all the things we've done. We've contained communism in Korea. We beat the Axis forces in World War II. We can't find this little trail. Well, let me show you why we can't find it. This is the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Let me move my face here. This is the trail. It's a series of tunnels and underground. How do you find something in a jungle that's underground, right? So here, okay, this is embarrassing. I have to move my face. Yeah, okay. So here we have, you see the U.S., possibly with some South Vietnamese forces, some ARVN forces looking. We have a Mi-113 or an M113 armored personnel carrier, and we have a bunch of soldiers. Now here is the fighting bunker. Here is like a lookout point, and here's the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It's a supply line. Here is another sort of scout lookout. They're armed, obviously, and it's completely underground. So there's a punji trap if the soldiers get too close to it. These are stakes, sharpened stakes with poison on them. They would fall in and be poisoned. There's another one there. Here's a Dien Bien Phu kitchen. Remember, Dien Bien Phu is a nod to the battle that the Vietnamese won to extricate the French from their country. And it's called, and because, of course, they beat the French by having similar tactics of underground supply lines. So here's the kitchen. Here's the well. Oftentimes, this one doesn't have it, but oftentimes you can enter through water, through be it the Mekong River or other tributaries, other bodies of water. That's a big entrance. Here's a booby trap to a false tunnel if the enemy would infiltrate. Here are dormitories, just very simple hammocks. Here's a storeroom. Here's a hospital where they treat their wounded underground, another storeroom. Tons of air shafts. And the kitchen, the Dien Bien Phu kitchen, would be vented very far away so that you wouldn't see or smell the food coming up. So as you can see, they did everything pretty much underground. So the thought of the Americans was if they could find the Ho Chi Minh Trail, if they could exfoliate the jungle with their Agent Orange and their gases, jellied gases, of napalm, they would be able to find the trail. They never really did. What ended up happening, as we'll see later, is they're going to end up invading Laos and Cambodia to try to find it because they know it goes through other countries. So there's that. Okay, so the war. In 1973, we negotiate the end of the war. The troops pull out. Congress ends the funding. That's it. And we end the war. Now, the South Vietnamese are instantly in peril because they realize that it's not over for them, that the North will eventually outrun them. And in 1975, that's exactly what happened. So before that, between 1973 and 1975, and even after, most South Vietnamese want to leave because they want to avoid communist re-education. They don't want to become refugees. They don't want to be a conquered province, basically, like our South was after the Civil War. So they try to leave. And this is the evacuation in 1975 of the American embassy in Saigon. This was planned and executed by a Westboro High graduate. He went on to be he is now a general in the U.S. Army. At the time, he was just a Marine who planned and executed this because in 75 we had to go and get all military personnel out of Vietnam because it was being overrun with communists. And here are refugees, South Vietnamese, who had been loyal to the U.S. government, trying to get over the barbed wire, trying to climb up on that last helicopter out. And it's a very sad picture. And if you've ever seen the musical Miss Saigon, this is iconic in that musical. And this is an iconic picture of the last personnel being helicoptered or airlifted, however you want to put it, out of Vietnam. Okay, so we're going to pause here and then go over the presidents, but we're just going to pause here.